Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Season 3 of the World with Nate podcast. I'm your host, Nate Allison. Today, I'm really excited to introduce you all to Jalissa. Jalissa, after learning about you, doing my creepy studying of you, and reading some of the things you wrote, I am so excited to have you here. Your outlook on life, it's exactly what we're looking for in the World with Nate podcast. So thank you for coming on.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
You are very welcome. So I brought you on to talk about you're a mother of 6 currently,
Yes.
soon to be 7.
Yes.
You homeschool your children, which I think is awesome, and I'm very curious as to how we go about that in a family that big.
Yes.
And but it hasn't always been picturesque for you.
Mm-hmm.
You had a journey on where you are today, and I want to talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
You were married prior to your current marriage.
Yes.
What happened there?
Yeah. So, years ago, my prior marriage was someone I had met in my teenage years.
Okay, so you were young.
When we first met, and we dated when I was younger.
Okay.
Didn't go great, separated for many years. I swore I would never go back to that situation. Then we ran into each other several years later when I'm an adult. I had a job, my own place, things like that. And it seemed to be that a lot of things had changed in his life, that he kind of had all the things that were not so great before.
Yeah.
Had all of it together, and was just healthy and well. And we ended up becoming friends and kind of started a relationship. And it wasn't long after that I was pregnant with Livy.
Okay.
And
the
first of my, biological children. And so it just kind of started from there. But unfortunately, as soon as pretty much that all began, it became apparent that things actually from the past were still there for him.
Some demons.
Yes.
I mean, we would like to think that second chances should be available to everyone.
Yeah, exactly. And as I've looked back, I've wondered, should I have known, that I've beat myself up over that a little bit, but of course I wouldn't change anything knowing I have my children
Where
now.
You're at now.
Yeah. But so we did get married. We had Livy, and then a little while went by and we ended up getting married, had our next baby, and just along the way, it just, chances were given, and we tried a lot of things to make things work, but there was unfortunately some addiction and things that were coming into play. And so, just with time, I kind of just had to get really honest with myself about the kind of environment that I wanted my children to grow up in and what I wanted. I had a little girl and a little boy. Is this what I want for my daughter someday? Is this what I want my son to be like?
Yeah.
And just having to kind of ask those hard questions, not only for myself, but for them. I was really hoped for a long time that things would get better, and they would for a while, and then they would get bad again. And so that was a pattern that just played out over and over for years.
Till the chances were gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
What, when you're looking at these things continuing to happen, nobody grows up hoping that it's not going to work out. Mm-hmm. You had said that you had thought maybe there might be some regret about it not working. How'd you get past that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, and I think about that decision a lot, and I think that it's never in the way that, obviously I have this whole other life now, so it's not in the way of like, oh, I wish we would have worked it out or something like that. I'm completely at peace with knowing that the decision that I made is what needed to happen based on the circumstance and where life was at. I think it's more just kind of almost sadness over, I really do look at marriage as a lifetime, right? And so it was a hard place to be of, I made this vow and this commitment. So
and meant it.
Yes, and I did mean it, but what do you do with that when the other party is not honoring it in the same way? Yeah. So it's hard. And having a faith in Jesus, believing, we know people can change. Mm-hmm. My husband and I both have, changed a lot from the people we were before we were saved.
Absolutely.
So I don't want to discredit that at all. But it's also just people have to be available for that change too, And
you have to choose.
Yes.
I can't be stuck in those old habits.
Yeah. So it's a little bit of both, I feel like, looking back on it.
Yeah. So you guys ended up getting a divorce and separating. And what was that process like?
Yeah. So at the time, basically, it was after things had gotten bad again. I had just had our second baby in January of that year.
So very young.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Our first child had just turned 2. And then our second baby was born when she was 2. And then it was, I think, that summer or fall when things kind of all fell apart again. Because it had gotten really bad after our second baby. And I said, I almost left then.
Yeah.
I said, this can never happen again. And then it did. And I said, okay, I don't know what's going to happen now. Maybe we'll work it out. I don't know, but you need to get your head straight.
Yeah.
We can't have this conversation until you kind of get a little more clear.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that just wasn't happening. So I had to make that decision. Do we just legally separate? Do I file for divorce? And I did end up filing for divorce.
Yeah.
And, at the time, it was kind of a unique situation. It wasn't just your regular 2 stable parents divorce. It was very much like when I filed for divorce, I also filed for sole custody. So I went from being married, and I think in a lot of ways I kind of was a single parent.
Yeah.
In a lot of seasons while I was married, so it wasn't totally new to me. And
Not a shocker in that regard, maybe.
Mm-hmm. And I think in some ways it was almost easier to be an actual single parent because I didn't have this hope and this longing of, okay, I have a partner, so why am I not in a partnership?
Yeah.
There was no unmet expectation. There was no bitterness over that. It was just, this is what it is.
Now you know.
Yes.
You're by yourself.
Yes. Yep. And I felt kind of the freedom to really, for the first time, because I tried so hard, and I think I did a pretty good job, even when things were rocky, of creating a really good environment in the midst of that. It would be like, I would kind of have to say, okay, you need to kind of be away and not here, because that was something that, I wasn't willing to have around our family.
Yeah.
So I feel like I did a pretty good job at maintaining a good atmosphere even with that, but it was nice for the first time in a long time to not have to worry about someone else's stuff.
Antics.
They were bringing, antics,
Yeah.
I mean, truly. So it was really hard, and it was hard because, my oldest was young enough to not fully understand, but old enough to notice that he was gone.
Yeah.
And so those were some really just like heartbreaking days.
Can't imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And being there and showing up and giving chance after chance and then getting your heart ripped out of your chest and stomped on again.
Yeah, it's hard.
I can't imagine that you felt very worthy at the time. How did you get out of it?
Well,
you left him.
Yes.
Started over.
Yes.
Were you scared, nervous?
I was. I battled a lot of guilt, and I just felt really sad for my kids, and especially, like I said, the oldest at the time. She was more in touch with where did he go? When is he coming back?
Dad's not here.
Yeah. And I mean, at the time, most of the time I didn't even know where he was.
Yeah.
I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know, honestly, if I'd get a phone call saying that he died. You know, it was hard. There were a lot of nights I laid with her in her bed and she would cry, and I didn't have answers, and it was hard. So, along with that, feeling the guilt of, I did this. I chose someone who I knew had struggles in the past. I chose to believe they could change. I chose to believe they could be better, and look where it got me. I wouldn't change it because I have these children and I would never take that back. But now they're hurting and it feels like it's my fault. I should have known better. So that was a really hard time. Not even so much I had my own heartache, but it didn't feel like the main pain at that time. It felt like for my kids. And I don't know if I have a black and white answer for how I got through that. I think that just being vulnerable with people close to me, and a friend of mine told me, she's like, you know what, her conception and birth and all of that, instead of looking at it as this thing of you let her down, her future self down by choosing this life, you didn't mean for this to be the life that she would grow up in. You genuinely chose hope, and you chose love, and you chose goodness, and you chose faith. And sometimes people fall short of that.
Absolutely.
But people are people, and just that gave me some comfort that I just remembering that, she was born out of so much love. Yeah. And just, a belief that people
are good.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the situation in that time wasn't working out that way, but I did appreciate the decision. He did agree for me to have sole custody. Yeah. I thought that was very,
very large.
Yeah. I really appreciated that. And I know that was a good decision. And
what was best for the children.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yep. So I think that, and that was probably the time too when I really got closest, or like really felt the strongest pull to start a real relationship with Jesus as well. That's
awesome.
I was like feeling called to church. And
prior to that, you didn't?
I believed in God, and my ex-husband and I would like go to church sometimes and things. And I think along the way somewhere he did get like water baptized, and we did the whole thing. And so I believed, but I never really had I had never read the Bible. I would go to church and sing along. I love to sing, but it was never really much deeper than that, I guess. Yeah. And so it was kind of for the first time, I was like, well, I should find a church. I should go. And I would go, and I would, during worship, just sit there, and I would just weep. I don't even know why I'm crying, but my heart was just
torn.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think that probably helped too, starting to. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, it helped. Mm-hmm. That's hard for me to hear because the accident that I was involved in happened on a Saturday. Mm-hmm. The next day, Sunday, I could not make it to church, and I felt cruddy. But then the following Sunday, I went, and same thing.
Yeah.
Just so blessed that I was even there, and my kids, and I don't know why I couldn't stop and control it, but and that was the place I needed to be.
Yep. Sometimes you don't even have the words. You don't even know the emotion. It just comes out. And I think it's such a beautiful way that we just are able to release, you know. And
be there and being there to do it.
Yeah. Yep.
It sure was healing for me. Mm-hmm. So you split up. When you're thinking about your future, what's your thoughts? I'm going to find Rico Suave, or I am never looking at another dude again. I'm done with this. I'm focused on me and my girl. Or boys?
Girl and boy.
Girl and boy. Okay.
Yep. So,
this is all over and you have your kids by yourself.
Yep. So I pretty much was like, I'm probably never going to get married again. Probably not going to date, because why would I date if I'm not? You see
this smile? I'm smiling because there's a happy ending.
There's more.
Yeah.
But wait, there's more.
Just wait.
Yeah. I'm probably never going to get married again. Probably not going to date, because why would I seriously date somebody if I'm not going to get married? And just, there was a lot of fear, first of all, around the safety of, how do I know a strange new man is going to be safe? That part bothered me. But also it really, I really value freedom and the ability to choose. Yeah. It's crazy, right? Yeah. But especially
from where you were at.
Yeah. Well, and especially as a mother, having the freedom to choose for my family, for my children and things. And so when I filed for divorce and had to file for the custody that I was wanting and all of those things, it was really scary for me to know that there was a chance that I would have to send my children, if he wouldn't agree to what I was asking for. And a judge doesn't know my specific situation, doesn't know all the details, it was really scary to feel like my children's safety was going to just be in the hands of a judge. I can't imagine that. Yeah, it was scary. And we didn't even have this big, long, drawn out battle. I cannot imagine what it's like for people who go through these processes and back and forth for years and all of that.
And they loathe each other by the time they're out of it.
Yeah. So even just mine was pretty short and was able to be handled quite simply, I guess, for lack of a better word. Yeah. But it was still really scary. Yeah. And so that part of things was really, I was like, I can never I can just never give somebody this power
over your life
Yeah,
and your
and-
responsibilities.
yes, and
I
the
understand
kids. And
that.
so I was just like, I'm just not, I just won't. So it wasn't even so much of like, everybody, everybody sucks, people are terrible. It was more just like the logistics of what it really looked like to become a single parent, a sole custody parent, and look out for the best interests of my children. It was that I was afraid to kind of give up the reins on a little bit to some extent.
Yeah. So during this time period, if you would have sent the girls with him, would have you felt their safety was compromised?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
He wouldn't have been able to care for them.
And it's hard because like, I don't want to, it's not like he was a bad father.
Dad.
Yeah. And, it was never like.
But you have to be responsible. And you have to
Right.
put your kids' needs first.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's hard. It was just hard. When things were good, it was good. And when things were bad, it was never like we were like verbally or physically abused. It was none of that, anything. And honestly, when it was bad, it was usually like he just would go and he would not be there, which is good. I mean, not good, but based on the circumstances, how it should be, I would say. So it wasn't so much that, if they would go with him, I feared that he would like do something bad.
Yeah.
It was more, what if a temptation arises that he has shown that he can't resist at this point? And then what happens, So that was more, I think, the fear of, that was more my fear. So just to be honoring of, things were not good with us, but also
addiction,
he was
that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And that grips, there's no demographic.
Right.
It
can be anybody.
Anybody. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and probably a lot of us can relate to some form of
addiction,
absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's just some are, it can be a lot more dangerous.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, but
some are acceptable.
Right. Yeah, to today's standards.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but no, I just like, I remember having this picture and it just, because like I am not like a fighter type of person. I'm very like, I like to get along with people.
People pleaser.
But man, when I had babies,
it's true.
got in touch with
Mama
this.
Bear.
Yeah, I was like, you're not going to tell me, we don't have to fight about it. But like, if I feel a certain way, you don't have to agree with me, and that's okay. But I am the parent, and this is how it will be. And so I just remember like this picture I would have of like sending them off, like seeing them, like in an old school movie, like looking out the back window of a car, sitting in the back seat, like having to watch them drive away. And I was home with my kids, like I co-sleep, I breastfeed, like I do all the things. So just to even physically imagine having to separate from them, but then especially in a situation that was proven for years to be very unstable and unsafe, that would just terrify
unfathomable.
me. Yeah. Truly.
Yeah, I can see that. Absolutely. Thankfully, it went your way.
Yeah.
But in the reality of things, it could have not.
Exactly.
Which is crazy to think.
Yep.
And it's such an individualized, and the cases require so much. You got to look at each individual person and each individual circumstance.
Yep.
And these are people's lives, your children's lives that are at stake.
Yeah, well, and I didn't want them to grow up too, like, I remember being so angry about, like, I did nothing wrong, and not because I'm perfect, and I never caused an argument, or not, like, in that way, but, like, in the big way of, like, truly impacting a marriage, right?
Right, you didn't cheat on him, you weren't going out drinking every night, you didn't...
I'm like, I'm a good mom, like, I'm over here, trying to help things along, whatever, but, like, so again, I'm not perfect, but just... I couldn't get past thinking like, so now I'm going to have to share my children, like split time, and they're going to have to grow up in a split home.
How did
only
you grow
with
up?
Me, together.
Yeah, your parents were together.
Yep. And our life wasn't perfect either, but it was really great, and just knowing what that was like to be able to have a mom and a dad together. It's not that you can't have a great life without it. I felt kind of like robbed almost of that, and I didn't want them to be robbed of that. Like, I remember thinking, like, just because somebody else can't keep it together, I don't want them to have to grow up in a messed up life. And then in would come the guilt of, well, you're the one who caused this, you know? So it was just this always so many mixed emotions, and having to have grace for him, having to have grace for myself, and just, I learned like just a lot about grace and a lot about forgiveness, and trying to, like, even when we don't understand and we don't know how we're going to get through it, and we don't know how we're going to let it go, just trying to like cultivate joy and like find the beauty in all the things, because that's just what I had to do
to get through. Well, that's a good way of going about it. It's better than stepping into the bad and the negative.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just didn't want to like traumatize my children. You know, that was the biggest thing. I'm like pregnancy, childbirth, delivery, like parenting, all of those things are just, I'm really, really passionate about them. I love them. And so I'm like, I have these beautiful children who have done nothing wrong. And they're like my little best friends, you know, as a stay-at-home mom. And I'm like, I just, to me, I saw this quote or something one time, and I'm like, that is how I feel. It said, like, I want to raise children, like, to grow up in a childhood they don't have to heal from.
Oh.
You know?
Yeah.
Big, right?
Yeah.
And that's how I felt.
And at no fault of your own.
Right.
Now you're in that circumstance.
Yep. And, you know, even if we have, you know, make all the right decisions or whatever, surely there's going to be things our kids grow up and they're like, man, I wish my mom didn't do things like that, you know, and that's normal and that's fine. But, you know, like on a deep level, I just really wanted to be able to raise them just in like a really wholesome way. So that was finding myself in that situation.
You were worried that was fleeing.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
That's right.
There's more.
There's more.
You said you were never getting married again.
Yeah.
Where the heck does Chris come from?
Yeah,
you
it's
found
a good
love
question.
Again. Yeah.
It's a good question. Have to ask the
and
Lord
thank
himself.
you for having so much strength to talk about these things. Some of these things in our past, we lock away deep, dark, down, never want to talk about them again.
Yeah.
That's not going to fix things. I appreciate you having the strength to come on and talk about this stuff.
Thank you.
And it's not the rosy, awesome, look, we climbed Mount Everest.
Yeah.
This shit is hard.
Yeah, it is
So
hard.
I do appreciate you coming on here. As a kid, and the stuff you were saying, I grew up in a single-parent home. My dad left when we were 13, and the things that you were saying, my mother said those things to me. She wanted the same as you. She grew up in a mom and dad household, and sometimes it just doesn't work like that.
That's right.
And so I think an awful lot of you on that regard. But Chris,
Yes.
where the heck did he come from?
Yeah. So,
And who is Chris?
Yeah, Chris is my husband. So I go through my divorce, and I'm just kind of dabbling like a little bit, like with going out, you know, on the weekends sometimes here and there, not a lot, but just kind of like not knowing what to do with myself now, right? You know, I'm going to church, but I'm still kind of like, okay, what do I do? And, but feeling like I don't want to date, I'm never going to get married. And the thing I started to focus on is, okay, how did I get here? Like,
It's a good question.
Yeah.
That's a real good question.
Because I'm like, as I look back at my life, you know, the people that I dated, like longer term, I didn't have a lot of longer term relationships, but the ones that I did had a very clear type of pattern.
Okay.
And like, I don't know if you would say demographic, but just, it was usually the same type of situation. It was like an addiction scenario, not for me. And it was just, you know, like some kind of a desire to rescue. I don't know exactly what. I'm like, I never.
And those are hard questions to ask yourself, because like you said, you had a lot of guilt and fault. So to step back into that and say, what did I really do wrong maybe?
Yeah, exactly.
Damn, you are a strong woman.
It was not
Those
super
questions
fun,
are hard.
You know, but the thing that really encouraged me was like, so I'm a little bit of both. I'm a little bit of like a dreamer and a visionary, but I'm also like very logical. And so while I want like the fairy tale fantasy awesome, I also want to like have a plan to get there.
Yeah.
You know, so for me, it really sucked to look at myself and think, okay, how did I contribute and how did I get here? But it also was really empowering, because I'm like, okay, because if I can accept the fact that I somehow in some way contributed and made choices that got me here, that means I can make different choices
I'm getting goosebumps.
in the future and end up somewhere different.
Hell
Like
yeah.
I am able to make that decision and change the trajectory so that I'm not here
Absolutely.
again. So
Oh, I
that's
love that.
yeah. And also I was just like, I want to understand these things because I also, for my kids.
Yeah, you've got girls you're raising and boys that you're raising.
So I want to be able to understand these things and teach them what healthy life and love looks like.
Yeah.
So I had started my business several years prior, and so through that I had made a lot of good connections for like business coaches, personal coaches, things like that. So my business coach at the kind of on and off at the time was
So you
also,
are for coaching.
oh yeah.
Same. We cannot completely be subject matters on anything.
Yeah.
So why would you not try to get somebody who's a little bit ahead of you to
Yeah.
teach you the ways, right?
Absolutely.
Hell yeah.
Absolutely.
Sorry to interrupt, but
No, that's okay.
there's
No.
so many people who don't find value in that.
Yep.
And man, everyone I've got learned
Worth
something.
it. Worth it. Yeah, you learn something. That's
Yeah.
just the thing. It may not be like the,
My life has changed. That's not what I was looking for in the beginning anyway.
That's right. And how would they be able to your life is going to be different than theirs, but
Right.
just the different perspectives and the things you're going to learn. It's beyond worth it,
Hell yeah.
in my opinion.
Sorry about that.
No,
Okay.
don't apologize.
I digress.
So I was able through her, which she was amazing. I'm so glad I had her throughout all of this time as well. But she was able to connect me with another coach that she knew who was kind of like I don't know if this is the right way to explain it, but like a relationship coach,
Okay.
like a love and relationship coach.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, I don't know if that's really what I'm looking
I
for,
could
because
see
I'm
the
not
tendency.
I'm not like looking to find love again.
Dr.
Like
Love
I just
here,
got
yeah.
I just got divorced a little bit ago and it was pretty bad, and I'm not really wanting to do that again. So
Yeah.
but I chatted with her to see, because she's like, no, I think like if you just hear it out. And sure enough, it wasn't just like, do this program and in 6 months you'll
Happily
be
ever
married.
after.
Yeah, you'll have your fairy
With a
tale.
white picket fence.
Yes, it wasn't like that. It was more like what I was looking to do, like uncovering
I like
some
that.
of your stuff from your past and figure out why you maybe settled where you settled, or you sacrificed where you sacrificed,
Yeah.
and what's that about? And like actually kind of painting the picture of what you truly want, and not being afraid to kind of like set some standards.
I like
And
that.
yeah, just actually, and I realized as I did do that program, I realized like, you mentioned earlier, like the worthiness. I realized pretty quickly how worthy I did not feel
Yeah.
of like a healthy, beautiful love. I wanted it. And I actually remember an old boyfriend of mine telling me in the middle of an argument, like, what you're looking for is a fairy tale. Like, it's never going to happen. Love, that's not real.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but it is real.
Yeah.
And I just always had this belief inside of me. I'm like, that doesn't have to, it's not to say that like every day is going to be perfect and it's tra-la-la, nobody ever disagrees. It's not that, but just like the goodness and, just the values and the honor. Like I just really,
I like that.
yeah, I just really started to realize that like, okay, I really want that, but I kind of didn't really maybe believe that it was available for me.
Yeah.
So starting to look at all of that was really deep
I'm sure.
and helpful. And, something they asked me is like, what have you been willing to trade your values for? And I'm like, ooh, that's a deep question.
Heavy.
Yeah. So having to kind of dive into all of that, and kind of looks back at your childhood and just a lot of different things, so what we make things mean, and what we believe about love, and what we believe about people. And
Our minds are so strong in that regard.
yeah.
When we can frame things to our own reality or belief,
Yeah.
when that's not the case sometimes.
Yep.
And reworking some of those things.
Yeah. Yep. For sure. So I did that program. That was a 6-month program. I think it was several months before I even started that, after my divorce. But I did that program, and towards the end of it, I was like, maybe I would date again someday.
So there was a little bit of a change of heart.
Yeah, there was.
Okay.
There was. As I started to like kind of break down some of these old belief
And
patterns.
see some hope.
And see what could be different, if I did choose differently. And again, not because I wanted to be where I was at, or I intentionally chose that, but I did along the way make choices that probably, if I were a little bit more healed on the inside, I didn't even know that I was broken.
Yeah.
You know, but I was
that.
making these big life decisions out of
fear or out of
lack, you know, a lack of self-esteem or whatever it may be. So, so I did that, and I started to kind of come to terms with the fact that maybe I would date again someday. And I was going to church, and I was traveling a fair amount with work at the time. And I think it was just like maybe like 3 or 4 months later, that I, on Facebook, Chris popped up on my, the people you may know.
Yeah.
And I
recommended friends or whatever. Okay.
Yeah, and I saw his name and his picture, and I was like,
I saw him. I love his tattoos. He's he's a looker.
He is a looker. He is. And so I saw that, and I was like, man, I recognize that name. I think I know him. But I'm like, but he looks so different. And so I went and was, researching.
Yep, researching
his profile, and doing a little backstory searching, and I'm like, wow, he was like all about Jesus and just like all this stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, traveling pictures. I'm like, okay, I'll send him a friend request.
Heck yeah.
Because we did actually go to school together, to high school.
Okay.
We were a couple of grades apart, and I don't think we ever had an actual conversation.
Where'd you go to high school?
In Independence.
So a small community where if you would think somebody Manchester, Westover.
Okay.
So you would think you would know everybody, but that's not really the case all the time. It's people that are a couple grades above, you don't know those people.
Right. Well, and I went
or have relationships with them.
Yes. And I went my first K through 5 at an even smaller school, where the town population is 200 people.
Yeah.
So I think there were 11 kids in my class for kindergarten through 5th.
Iowa.
Yeah, which I loved it. It was awesome. It's no longer there, which is really sad. But so then 6th grade up, I went to the bigger school, and he had gone there. He was one of the town kids, so he had always gone there. So I never knew him even in the earlier days. Yeah. It wasn't until middle high school that we were in the same schools. But so I knew of him, didn't know him personally, but I sent him a friend request. He accepted.
Of course.
And then nothing happened. And then it was, I think even maybe a few months after that then I was in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Okay.
For a convention.
Awesome.
And
I love Utah, by the way.
It's beautiful. I had never been.
Beautiful. I lived there for a couple of years in the military.
That's awesome.
I always said if you could take all the people from Iowa, put them in Utah, it'd be the perfect state.
There you go. That's
just because we're so nice.
Yeah, I know. I was pretty cool.
Yeah,
pretty cool. But I was there, and I remember I was literally sitting. It was break time, lunchtime, sitting in the floor of the hallway eating my lunch from the little concession stand, and I get a message on my phone, and it was from Chris. And I'm like, oh, what's this going to say?
I planted the seeds, and now he's messaging me.
That's right. And he asked me about a blog post at the time I was blogging.
Okay.
And he asked me about a blog post that I had written.
Okay.
He's like, hey, I was reading this, and now I can't find it.
So he's a reader, too, plus.
Yep.
Smart guy.
Taking an interest in my thoughts.
Stuff that's really important.
Yeah. So, he asked if I had the link, because he couldn't, re-find it.
Sure.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Nice, Chris.
We may never know if that was true or not. But.
I'm hoping to ask him in January at the party. I'll give him a few drinks.
Yeah, there you go.
Just tell me the truth.
Yeah, just let me know. So, I sent it to him, and he just encouraged me. He's like, that's so cool.
That's awesome.
Speaking to people.
Been a while since you felt that.
Yeah, yeah.
Somebody who is putting good into you.
Yeah, yep. Encouraging the deep thoughts and all of that. So, so I think just from there, we just kind of never stopped talking.
Yeah.
We just became best friends
awesome.
when I was in Utah. It just right away we started talking a lot. I knew he had been traveling. I could get the gist of that from his pictures, but I didn't know a lot about it. So I asked him to tell me what he'd been up to, and he started to kind of dive into that, and he was all about Jesus. He had gotten radically changed, a few years prior.
That's awesome.
And I'm like, well, this is perfect because I really feel like I'm supposed to start reading the Bible, but I'm kind of scared because I know I'll probably be convicted and feel like there's some things I need to change, and
it's easy to feel that way when you're trying to hold yourself to perfection.
Yeah. Yep. So that was the foundation of our relationship.
Healthy relationship start.
Yeah, right. Crazy.
Yeah. That's awesome.
It was new.
But
new.
when you haven't seen that and you never modeled it, how are you expected to know?
Yeah. You just don't.
Yeah, you don't. You just don't. So how fast did it progress with Chris? How soon did you know, like, this guy's the guy?
It's actually kind of a funny story.
I want to hear it then.
Yeah. So I knew really quickly.
Yeah.
And
from somebody who said they were never getting married again?
No, imagine how I felt on the inside. And like, how I'm like, I have the visionary fantasy, but also like the logical.
Trying to put yourself, is this real?
Yeah. Yeah. So he did not know for sure. Do
you have any trust issues prior? I mean, you guys have been together now, but at that time, what if this is all just make believe, or what if?
Oh yeah.
I can't imagine. There has to be some of that stuff that always lingers.
Yes, for sure. Well, and I think though at the time it was interesting because remember how I had said I was really feeling pulled to a relationship with Jesus. So that was like that had just continued to grow. So then I start, Chris and I were talking. I was actively going to church. I was, just really starting to like lean into the Holy Spirit and just getting close.
Being called.
And all of those things for the first time. And just actually like knowing what that felt like. So I meet him, we start talking, and just become like, immediate best friends. And then it was probably like we started going to church together. We started doing everything together.
Notice not the bar together.
Right.
We're going to church together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And he had a daughter.
Yeah.
And so at the time I had the 2 kids, he had the 1. And so they were all like, became little besties. So they always wanted to hang out.
That makes it easier for sure. I'm sure.
Yeah. So we were just would hang out. And I think it was maybe like a few months. And I believe that I heard from the Lord, or however, people want to say it, but absolutely, I believe that God told me, this is the man you're going to marry.
Oh, gives me goosebumps.
And I'm like, because also like he, he can share his own in-depth story, but he had been through heartbreak even more recently than I had.
Yeah.
So he didn't do a 6-month love coaching program. So he was still a little bit like
standoffish maybe.
Yeah. And just still kind of really hurt.
Yeah.
Still just kind of really having a hard time.
And you were aware of those things.
Yep. And he was too, but just, he was kind of still in the, I don't know if the angry phase is the right word, but just not understanding why, and just kind of in a dark season.
Yeah.
Honestly, he kind of was when we met. And so I'm like, great. So how am I supposed to handle this? And so like I didn't say anything about it for a little while. But then I decided that I was going to tell him. Because
you had feelings other than just, hey, we're not just friends.
I actually just dove right in and told him, hey, God told me we're supposed to like be together, like together. So I understand if you don't feel that way or you don't know, but like
you felt that much conviction.
Because I felt a little dishonest, frankly.
Oh, wow.
Not telling him and just like pretending to just like be his friend. And then I'm like, what if he like starts talking to someone else? And then I'm over here like it just, I didn't want to like always have that, not hanging over me in a bad way, but just we were like close enough.
Honest.
We were very honest with each other. And I was like, at least if I tell him, then I know that he knows.
Yeah, it's out there.
And it's not like he has to like act on it right away or whatever, but I just felt uncomfortable not saying anything. I felt, like I said, it was kind of dishonest, almost like I had like ulterior motives that I knew about, but he didn't, if I weren't to tell him. And he wasn't like super receptive to that right away. He, like I said, was, he was hurt, and I didn't expect him to really just be like, oh yeah, okay, cool, let's go get married.
But to make space, you made space for him.
Yeah. And so it was honestly, it was an interesting time. Like we were best friends and would kind of sometimes lean more towards like being more than friends, but then we were just like friends again. And, we were open about like knowing that we weren't committed to each other. So there was like some hard seasons of knowing like, if he was talking to anyone else, and that was okay, because we were, again, open and honest with each other. And it was just, but it was weird because like,
I knew I was supposed to be with this man forever.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, I mean, I prayed
How much growth.
so much
Wow.
throughout that time. And I'm like, God, what are you,
Yeah.
what are you doing here? You know, because
Yeah.
this doesn't really make sense to me. But it was also hard because I still to this day don't fully like understand my own like personality and just like my own, I don't really feel like I have a concrete like style. And if somebody asks me my favorite song, I'm like, oh my gosh,
The hardest question you've ever been
yeah,
asked.
I have no idea. I don't know. Because I like a lot of different styles. I like a lot of different things. And I remember when I was thinking about what would like my ideal love,
Yeah.
what would they even be like? What would they like? What would they look like? And then in walks Christopher. And he's like skater / punk rock,
Yep.
but got tattoos, but loves
Tattoos,
Jesus, and like kind of a baddie, but like also really loving and gentle and sweet. And I'm like, well,
That's it.
that's it. There it is. So
I love that.
yeah, so I just everything just fit perfectly, but it just wasn't the right time, and he
Yeah.
wasn't ready. And for a long time I was okay with that, even though it was really hard. I suppose I should say my human nature wasn't really okay with that. There were times it was kind of really painful, to be
Yeah,
honest.
I'm sure.
But I just prayed so much through that season. I'm like, Lord, I have tried to do life on my own in the ways that I think I'm supposed to do it and make the decisions that I think I'm supposed to make.
By
And
yourself.
and that didn't really work out the greatest for me in a lot of ways. So I'm at this point where like, I'm just letting you lead my life. And I don't know what's going on right now, but like I trust. And I also like, I'm a responsible parent. So I'm also like not wanting to get into a situation where like, I was trying to be really responsible for the kids and all of that. So I'm like, Lord, I trust you with my life. I trust you with my children. And that was
Tough for
that
you.
was tough for me. That still is a kind of a hard one for me, but just like, I trust you to lead me. And I remember one morning I went out on a gravel road at like sunrise and I just cried and I'm like, I don't want to do this. Like, it is a really painful position to be in, to love somebody so much and they just are so hurt and so walled off that they just won't even allow themselves to go there. And especially when you can feel that they love you too.
Yeah.
But they just like can't, or they just won't.
Hurts too much.
And they're just, running and just in a hard place, And I remember going and I was like, what do I do? What do I do? And I heard, just love him and let me do the rest. And I'm like, okay, okay. It's only the hardest thing you've ever asked me to do, but I'll do it. So that's what I tried to do. And we were kind of in that season. I mean, I think from the time we met, I want to say it was like maybe a year and a half. We were kind of in that space.
Yeah.
And eventually we kind of came to the point where it was like, it was enough of knowing that, there wasn't really like if we weren't in a place where we were going to be together, but it also felt really uncomfortable for me to think of either of us like seriously being with somebody else.
Yeah.
And so we started to kind of have those conversations of, look, like we are together literally every day, all the time. Our kids are best friends. We are best friends. But like, what's it really going to look like? Because like I am at the place where like, if you truly are not open to being with me or anybody in a serious way, like I do want that. So like, I'm trying to like follow the Lord's leading, but also I'm trying to like honor my heart.
Yeah.
And my future. So like, I do want a future with somebody. And if that's truly not something you're ever going to be willing to be open to, I need to know, because it's going to like change things for us probably, and just trying to be honest with ourselves and each other.
Those are tough conversations to have.
Yeah, really tough. Because neither of us wanted to lose each other as friends.
Right.
Or more, but it was just hard. It was hard all around. So, we ended up, I think it was like one night, I was getting ready for bed. And it was interesting too, like the way that God was like speaking to me, like on his behalf. There would be times when like, I'm like, I just need to like message him right now, or I just need to pray for him right now. Like, I just know something's like going on. Yeah. And sure enough, I would like text him and be like, I don't know what's going on, but like, I'm praying for you, like right now. And he would be like, you know, having a really bad night or something bad would be like going down or whatever. I don't know. But, so it's interesting the way that like God was kind of all along the way. He just really working together, or working through us. But then I remember one night.
You have to be open and accepting to hear it, or it just goes to the wayside.
Yeah. Yep. So
it's wild how that works.
Yeah. So one night, I finally just kind of had enough. And I was like, you know what? I was praying.
Figure it out, Chris. God.
That's what
what
I
am
did.
I supposed to do?
I did. I was like, you know what? Like, if this is really supposed to be, like, I am ready now. Like, I have fully opened to the possibility of remarriage in the future. I have fully, like, all of those things. Like, I have come to terms with the fact that I want a husband. I want a godly husband. I want a godly marriage. I want that for my family. I want to be able to raise my children in that type of home.
Yeah.
I want to be loved that way. And I want you to lead me in that. So, like, if Chris truly is the one that's supposed to be with, just, like, please let him know the way that you've let me know. Like, let it be so clear to him that there's not a doubt in his mind. And, or that he can't, like, run away from it anywhere.
He has to stand.
Yeah. And sure enough, the next morning.
Get out of here.
Yeah. The next morning, he rolls up on his motorcycle to my house.
Bad boy.
Because he's got a motorcycle.
Of course he does.
Yep. And rolls up and he was like, so I had a dream about you last night. And I'm like, oh yeah? And he had this dream and, you know, basically just that I was with someone else. And he was
scared
like
the shit out of him.
Yeah, I was like,
Good,
I realize
Chris.
it now. You know, yeah, I realize it now. But like, I don't remember if I couldn't hear him, if he was yelling for me, but I just, you know, it was something along those lines. And so it just, he had kind of a realization. And
Don't want to do it without you.
Yep. And then he's like, so we should probably like go on a date soon. Like, what are you doing later today? I'm like, okay.
The first official date.
Yeah,
Very
right.
cool.
And then like the next week we went to look at wedding rings.
Oh, wow.
So we really didn't
date
even...
and then next week you're married.
Yeah. I mean, we truly, I think it was within a couple weeks, we went and looked at rings. And I remember asking him on the way, I was like, so like, are we like just going to casually just like look at rings? Or are you talking like we're like actually like we're gonna like get married and we're going to like buy wedding rings? He's like, well, I guess we'll just see what happens. I'm like, okay. And sure enough, we bought wedding rings while we were there.
Cool.
There was just the perfect
what
set,
exactly
perfect.
Made for you.
Yeah. And so yeah, I think the next week we went and got our marriage license.
Okay.
And it was a couple months before we actually had the wedding, but that was in the fall. I told our family. His family was like not surprised at all. And they were all like all for it. My family was a little more like,
yeah, nervous for you.
Yeah, and this was during kind of COVID times too. And
the craziness
oh my
everything.
Gosh, yeah. So like my family wasn't getting together a lot during that time. So they really hadn't been around him a lot. So I mean, they were just
apprehensive,
concerned.
I'm sure.
Yeah. But I'm like, you just
He's
trust
it.
me. Yeah, he's it. And as soon as they started to be able to be around him,
Sold.
they're like, okay, got it. But yeah, we ended up getting married a few months later.
And at that point in time, there were 3 kids.
Yes.
Okay. Now your family has grown considerably since then.
Yes, it's doubled.
Yes, you have 6 now.
Yes.
What did that look like?
Yeah. So.
And what I mean, there was chat about what you wanted your family to look like, and where was that at?
Yeah. So we
back then.
Back then. So as far as like if we wanted to have more children
together, how many more? What was the thought process?
Yeah, I honestly can't recall for sure if we like knew for certain. No, we don't. Surely we didn't say, no, we don't want to have more kids because obviously, but I don't think we had like a set number or anything like that. I think we were just kind of open. I think it just happened faster than we really probably thought. But we actually had twins.
Yeah.
In our first year.
Is there a history of that in either of your families?
You know,
or was that just
my
a
husband
blessing?
actually asked me that at the ultrasound where we found out they were
Oh,
twins.
he put it on you.
And it was funny because I'm like, no. And then I'm like, wait.
Why are you asking that?
Yeah, why? And then I'm like, oh, wait, actually, yeah. Like, basically, like 3 generations
Wow.
have had twin girls.
Yeah.
So, but I have like a really large family. And I'm like kind of on the mid to younger end probably of the cousins.
Okay.
I have like 40 some first cousins on my dad's side
Huge
alone.
family. Yeah.
And
I
to
had
my knowledge,
one cousin on my mom's
see,
side.
isn't that so funny? Like I never had that concept
Yeah.
growing up. Like I just thought that there were all these
how it
cousins
was.
running around. Yeah. But to my knowledge, nobody has had twins yet. And it just was never like, it wasn't something,
Yeah.
some families are like, ooh, you're probably going to have twins.
Yeah.
Because our family never talked about that. So I never, until somebody asked me that, I didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Sure as shit.
Yeah, we're the one. And I'm like, of all the people to have twins, I feel like it makes sense. Like we're kind of into like wild and out there things. So I mean, it just kind of fits.
Yeah, what is the experience with like twins? You have 2 babies immediately. Both have tons of needs. And you had said you're breastfeeding?
Yeah.
So is it like one-on-one each?
Yeah.
Man.
It was like, it was really hard. Even
That's a
just the
lot.
pregnant, and I love pregnancy, as I said. I love delivery. I love all of it. But it was very, very hard. Even just the pregnancy. And I had a really like complications-free pregnancy, but I think by the end of it, I was measuring at like 50 weeks. They measure your stomach, how big it is. And I don't think that was even when I was like at the end. I think I was measuring 40 weeks, which is full term, like in the middle of my pregnancy, so I still had another 4.5 months to go.
Yeah.
So that, just the physical
toll it takes. Yeah.
That was really hard. But then, once they were born, I just pretty much like just slept with them. The only way I could get any sleep was just to like get all comfy in the bed, and like I always called it like my throne. But then it was horrible because like I could sleep, but then like the bottom half of my body would kind of go numb because I couldn't really move. So I'm like, well, I can't feel my legs, but I can sleep for a little bit. So it was really challenging.
Quite an experience.
Yeah, but it was so cool.
So
like
how old are the twins now?
They just turned 2.
Okay. So you guys still have quite a bit on your hands.
Yeah. We've also had another baby since.
Okay.
So he is 8 months old.
Okay.
And we're expecting baby number 7 in the spring. So we've got a lot of babies. Yeah.
A lot going on in the house.
Yeah. Our big kids are 5, 7, and 10.
Okay.
So they're...
You have a little bit of help there then.
Yeah. And it's, it's fun. I always really try to like balance that though too of... I think when people look at a big family, a lot of times they have this kind of perception of...
There's a lot of different things.
There's so many. We hear so many different perspectives.
Are you Catholic? Stuff like that.
Right,
And we are, but we only have 4. 4 kids, and it's like, I'm constant. I'm a stay-at-home dad as well. And it seems every time I go into the grocery store, there's some of the older generation who's got to say like, oh, wow, you've really got your hands full. It's like, I do this every day, guys.
Yeah. It wasn't like an accident.
No,
it wasn't like a terrible mistake that happened. It was like, we have these kids on purpose,
Yeah.
Yeah.
On purpose.
Yeah,
That's a good way
we wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I try to be like, again, the whole thing of I want to raise my children to have a childhood they don't have to like
escape from.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we try to kind of hold both. Like I don't want them to feel like the older ones to feel like, well, because my parents chose to have a big family, I had to raise my siblings, so I'm never having kids someday.
You're cognizant of that.
Yes. So I don't want them to feel that way. I also think it is a really beautiful thing to raise children in a home where they can experience a little bit of sacrifice for one another and empathy for one another and consideration for one another and just the helpfulness. And so I think it's
realizing that life is so much bigger than just oneself.
Yes, exactly.
It shows them early.
Yes, it does. It really does.
It
and I think that it's just, I remember after I had my first and I was pregnant with my second. And I was worried because she was like my little bestie. We did everything together. I just would do anything for her. I'm like, oh my gosh, was so excited to have another baby, but I was just nervous. Like, is it going to change my relationship with her? You know, people say you just love the next one, but it's like,
that's hard to conceptualize and understand.
It is, because you love this one so much.
So
it's like,
much.
But is it going to be different?
Right.
Like,
Is it going to be half?
Yeah.
No, I felt that.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely did. And I was, as a man, I was definitely nervous about that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And my mom told me, and I was so thankful because it was the perfect thing I needed to hear. She said, you know, as a parent, like, you can love your children so much. You can give them everything or do all the things right. But she said, when you give them a sibling, it's giving them like a whole different kind of love that you would not be able to give.
Yeah.
And just acknowledging that, you know, of course, some families only have one child, and it's not that they're like going to be lacking forever, right, or that there's anything wrong with that. But just another perspective of having a sibling, and as the mom, you know, that it's not taking something away, it's adding to for them, you know. And are there going to be moments where they're like, oh, so-and-so, you're using my toy or wearing my shirt or whatever? Like, of course. But overall, we just really try to cultivate like a sense of that every single one of them, whether there were 2 or 12, they all have
a little bit of foreshadowing there.
Yeah, I know, right? They all have a unique place, and they all are valued. And we, you know, even if we don't have time to like take each one of them out on a date every single week or something, which I don't know if we'd be able to do that even if we had 1 or 2 kids anyways, but you know, we try to just throughout our day-to-day life just really build them up and love on them and speak life into them. And sometimes I think that's almost even more valuable than just the big hoorahs once in a while too, you know.
Yeah, the consistency of having a loving home where parents care about you.
Yep. Yeah,
that's what I'm banking on.
Yeah, hey, I think it's, you know, I think that just...
It's a good strategy. Hell yeah. Now you guys have, we said 6, and number 7 will be here in the spring.
Yeah.
The blended family. How does that work? What's that look like? Has there been any issues? Has it been smooth?
So that has been, I mean, challenging, you know, honestly. Just, I think the biggest thing for us has been, Chris and I are 2, like, independent people. We're both 2, like, I'll say opinionated, somewhat, in some ways, stubborn people, and which can really be, like, a really great thing. And then it can also be a bit of a challenge when you're trying to blend. Yeah. You know, he was a single parent for years.
Yeah. Having to do it one way.
Yeah, I was a single parent for years. I also had my background of like, I know what I don't want it to look like, for sure. And I know what I've worked really hard to cultivate. And so like, but also trying to, for me, kind of give up the reins of, okay, I'm not a single mother anymore. And I do have a husband now who wants to help lead our family.
Yeah. Oh, and
like so that. Honoring my relationship with, at the time, my 2, and not just saying, oh, you have a new father figure now, so now you have to listen to whatever he says and I don't get to make decisions anymore. Not like that. Right. But just trying to, again, kind of hold all of that and
navigate that.
Yeah, it was hard. It really was hard.
And new.
Yes. And so we have a great relationship with our oldest biological mom, and we share the time. So that's great. We all live nearby. And so that part has always, since I've been in the picture, and I think even before I came into the picture, that situation, that relationship has always been really great, which is awesome. Yeah. Huge, huge blessing. We're so thankful for that. So that part of it has never really been a challenge. Yeah, I think just the challenge of, you know, it's hard. And it's hard for the children when they're going back and forth, and it's hard on the parents.
Rules change, guidelines change, what's expected.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I could see that.
So just all of that in and of itself. But I think, you know, the longer as time went on, you know, he kind of figured out good routines, or like even a good schedule for how we could split the time, you know, that could be the healthiest for her, and just kind of everybody working together. Like it just all went really well. Absolutely. And I feel like have a really good structure and routine with that. that really helped. So she knows what to expect, and we know what to expect, and the siblings know what to expect, and everybody can at least try to have, kind of as seamless of a transitions as they can.
So it's not every week complete chaos turning upside down when we're switching homes.
Right.
Yeah, because it's hardest on the kids.
Yes, exactly. We know that when she's with us, I'm sure she misses her mom.
Yeah.
And when she's with her mom, I'm sure she misses her dad.
Absolutely.
And, so I'm really thankful that she has her mom.
Yeah.
She has another home that loves her so much and would do anything for her. And so I'm just really glad that she has that. And then we're all able to work together,
figure out
and just love her. And so it was obviously a little bit of a different dynamic with my two,
right.
And I always feel weird saying my two. It's certainly, we don't have an atmosphere in our
split.
home of but just for conversation's sake of differentiating the two. So their biological father was kind of just never in the picture again.
Yeah.
Until a little more recently, we did start to have some contact. But Chris actually did end up adopting them.
Hell yeah.
So that was really this last fall.
That's a special moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was really great. So, and for the younger of the two, I think he was maybe like 8 months old when the divorce happened. So Chris, really...
His whole life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. It's the only father figure that he has seen. So, yeah, just trying to, I guess, try to take the best pieces of what we each bring to the table has been the biggest part, and trying to allow my husband to lead, and him allowing me to be the additional, not allowing me to be, but seeing me as the additional voice of wisdom, and my, just both of us coming together to kind of do it as a team has been, I think, the biggest part of trying to blend the family. And it still has its challenges. There's still things that we're like, one of us, would handle differently, or I'm sure you have that in a non-blended family too. So that's probably not specific to
where
that.
we keep the air on in our house.
Yeah, that's for sure.
That's caused World War III.
Yes. Yeah. So we just sometimes have to take that day by day. But I think at the end of the day, we have like a similar value system, and that at the foundation helps us.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
That is a very strong piece that I hope listeners, if they are feeling any sort of way, the closer you can get to the things that you both value, I think the better off that we are, so that people aren't having to change for one another, because that's never going to work. Yeah. Hell yeah.
Yep.
You homeschool.
Yes.
All these kids. What is that like?
Yeah.
Trying to get them to all sit down to read or do spelling. Or...
Yes. So our oldest does go to public school.
Okay.
Yep. And she, for the most part, seems to love it, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
And then we, so the next two are the only two that I'm like actively schooling.
Yeah.
And we honestly, I have a very like relaxed homeschool
environment.
Yeah. Yeah. We're definitely not into like the whole, like the far, like unschool category. I have a curriculum for them and things like that. But I just, especially in their early years, I just really feel very strongly for our family to not push it, and just, we talk to our kids, we play with our kids, they do life side by side with us. I'm home. And so it was really amazing when I started our second oldest, the oldest of the homeschooled children. Yeah. I started her on like an actual curriculum. And I just, honestly, I waited until Iowa's law says you have to start, which I think is when they would start first grade, when they are 6 by September or something like that. Okay. So I waited all the way up until that.
To get a standardized curriculum?
To actually start like an official, I ordered it. It's The Good and the Beautiful. Yeah, it's like a Christian-based. Okay. Yeah. Yep. So we did a lot of learning stuff just on our own, but it wasn't like an official, okay, we're going to do school today. Yeah. We're going to like have a schedule with this. It was just kind of very...
Always there.
Yeah, very organic. It just kind of happened. Or she would ask something. I'm like, oh, let's sit down and learn about that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So... And
we
the
are
reason,
our kids' first and most important teacher. And I think that's lacking in society today. We think that the school is supposed to teach them everything. And how?
Yeah. They just can't.
No.
Yep, they just can't.
If we are not instilling the important things early on in ourselves, then we're going to rely on society to do it for us. I don't have that answer.
Do we align with the way society lives and what they,
how we're doing business? Yeah,
absolutely. Exactly. And maybe not even do we condemn them for that, but is that what we want for our children?
Absolutely not.
Exactly. So, but it was really interesting because then when they have like a placement test that you have them take to determine which level they start at. And it was cool because she, with her placement test, landed right at like the first
where she
grade
needed
level.
to be.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's
she
very
naturally
got
learned
there
without any formal schooling.
Yeah.
So it was great. So we, and with the younger one, he will be starting kind of like a very loose kindergarten this year, just to kind of help for starting with first grade next year.
So that's a lot. Get them, and we're in the same boat. We have a preschooler right now who's going just a little bit to try to just get into the sitting for that long. It's hard. Yeah.
So I've just found, and it wasn't like, oh, I have all these kids, so I'm gonna just have to be relaxed about homeschool. It was never like, I really try.
It wasn't forced. It was a choice.
Yeah, it's an intentional decision that, like, no, even before I met Chris, like, I knew I was going to homeschool. It was important to me. And I knew that I didn't want to put a lot of pressure on it. I knew that I wanted to let them be little while they were little.
Yeah.
And so, it definitely isn't because, like, I don't have the time or it's too chaotic. It was, on purpose and would be that way even if it was just still the two of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just try to like create structure where I can, because I know that's healthy for them. It's healthy for me. So if we can have like a routine of, okay, we're going to do school, we're going to do one subject in the morning while the twins are eating their breakfast. Like after you finish, we'll do one subject. And then later while they're napping in the afternoon, we'll do the other. Sometimes that works well for us for a few weeks. And then we switch to something different, like we kind of just,
flexible.
we just, and I love that I feel like the kids are able to be very like free flowy with that as well. They don't seem to have a big issue with like, no, Mom, the schedule has to be this way. And I appreciate that they can stay within the structure when it's there. Or they're willing to be like, oh, okay, we'll switch it up if we need to. Yeah, so I think that's...
Because I know what happens to me when I don't have structure.
I know. I like to think I don't like structure, but then it's just chaos and I don't do well with chaos. So that's kind of, I guess, the way that I've tried to navigate that. Yeah, and as the babies continue to grow, I think the beautiful thing about homeschool is that it's different, like I mentioned earlier, but it's not public school at home. So I think a lot of people, even some of my family members have been like, how are you going to do this? Is this really what's right? So I've definitely come up against that. Sometimes
the naysayers, the people who just might not understand.
Or people will say, oh, it's okay while they're little, but, or, well, how are you going to socialize them? I'm like, it's just, and I get it. I get that kind of was for a long time the perspective.
That condensation that people think that's the way it is or it needs to be.
Yep. But I don't, like, when it comes to decisions like that for a family, I'm definitely a researcher. Like, when I was pregnant for the first time, I did not think I would be, before I had kids, I didn't think I would be the kind of parent that I am now. I was like, my kids, because, like, I slept in my parents' room for a long time. I was like, just kind of did whatever. And I'm like, I'm not going to be like that. They need to have a routine. And I do agree, they need a routine. But, like, we co-sleep with the babies.
Yeah.
We breastfeed. Like, all of these things that just very much like attachment parenting, gentle parenting. I never thought that it would be that way. But when I was pregnant, and I'm like, why do people always ask me, oh, are you going to breastfeed? I'm like, what? I don't know. I mean, probably I'll try. So I looked it up one day. I'm like, what's so, like,
Why breastfeed?
Yeah.
Why formula?
Yeah. And it just started this whole
wormhole.
I'm like, oh, okay. So that's why some people really do choose to do it. And it switched from, yeah, I think I'll try if I can, to I'm going to do anything I can to make this work. And I did have to fight to nurse her, but I did. And, it's just.
How empowering.
Yeah. So all of my parenting decisions then, now, and in the future are very much based in, like, they have a reason. And I'm secure in the reason.
Your
and
why.
even if other people don't understand it, I know that it's what we believe to be best for our family. It's not,
Hell yeah.
just because it's easier. It's because it's what we believe to be best for them. May not be best for everybody. That's okay.
Absolutely.
But for us, it's on purpose.
Hell yeah.
So
being concrete in your why, it clears up so much in life.
Mm-hmm. And it'll sustain you through the times when
mm-hmm, hell yeah.
Mm-hmm, or when people question, or things don't quite work out the way you think.
Absolutely.
When you have that foundation, it makes all the difference in the world.
Hell yeah. Well, we're running short on time, but I can't let you out of here without talking a little bit about home birth.
Oh yeah.
You're having your babies at home. What was your reasoning for what compelled you to do that?
So my first birth I had in the hospital.
Okay.
And I went into it, again, I had started researching throughout my pregnancy and, epidurals, the induction, all the things. I was really
lots of questions, wanted lots of information.
Yes. And I just throughout the later weeks of my pregnancy started to have kind of not a great experience at the hospital at my appointments.
Okay.
I've always had just a high BMI, even at the times in my life when I have felt like the most fit ever. I just always have. And I started in my appointments, that started to become that was
fixation.
Kind of with my providers. And I'm like, well, I don't have high blood pressure. There's no indication of any issues with my baby. I'm very healthy. It was just interesting how the conversation all started to turn towards, well, since you have a high BMI, you need to start to kind of be open to the fact that you may need to have, you may want to have an epidural, or you may need a C-section, or just and I can understand trying to help you prepare for that, but it kind of just started to become, I started to feel like they were trying to kind of almost scare me into this is what we're going to do because there's all these risks. And I'm like, well, can you tell me more about that? Why would that be?
Right.
And I just kind of started to feel this doesn't really feel like it's going down a path of empowerment. It kind of feels like I'm going to be kind of just rabbit trailed into, here's black and white, cut and dry, what we do for people like you.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if
Instead
you're healthy.
Of you,
it doesn't matter if your baby's healthy.
Dang.
So I kind of started to bristle up a little bit. I started to feel I don't know. But at the time, I don't know if I just didn't know about home birth yet, or if I just was it was late enough in my pregnancy.
It's too crunchy for you.
Yeah, right. I don't really exactly know, but that wasn't really an option for me for whatever reason, or in my mind. And so I ended up, I did end up being induced. I had gone over my due date by maybe a week, and I think there was some question of if my water had broken or something along those lines, where basically they said, we think you should be induced. And I went with it. I did do that, and I was about, I think, 8 hours into labor, and I ended up, it was horrible, just with the medication.
The experience and everything.
Yeah, it was just really painful, and it was just really, it was just intense, which labor is intense, but now having...
Wait a second, you have said that you enjoy pregnancy, and this does not sound like...
Yeah, it was...
So the first one was bad.
It was hard. There weren't a ton of complications or anything, so it really could have been bad, but just the pain. Now, having experienced natural birth, it was very different.
Yeah.
It was very intense. As soon as that medicine kicked in, my contractions were boom, very intense. And so I ended up, after 8 hours, getting an epidural, which I was really sad about.
You didn't want one in the to start. That was not your plan of attack.
No. So I was trying really hard not to, but I was so tense, and it was like
and
I was
you
not
have people
progressing.
speaking into you, get an epidural, just get an epidural, just get an epidural. We can make this quick. We can finish it up. We can get you out of the bed.
Yeah. You'll
Yuck.
relax. You'll be able to sleep. And I mean, it was true. I couldn't really feel much anymore, and I was able to sleep. And by the time I woke up, they're like, "Oh, you're ready to push." And so, so that was my first.
Sleeping when you're giving birth.
Well, I mean, preparing. I was awake when I pushed the baby out. But.
I know, but
Yeah.
you think of the rest of the earth, and when they give birth,
Yeah.
it's not a time when you sleep.
Yeah. It was interesting.
Yeah.
It was very interesting.
Wow, what an experience.
Yeah. And of course there was the dynamic too of I was married at the time and not in a great situation. So all of that played into it too. But, so I did that. And at the end of the day, I had a healthy baby. Mm-hmm. I was healthy, no major complications. So it didn't exactly go the way I wanted, but I'm like, well, I have a healthy baby.
Yeah.
But then I somehow along the way found out about home birth. And I'm like, I really think I want to look into this with my next baby. And so, I don't even know exactly what made me decide for sure. I just think that I felt like the thing that I didn't want to happen kind of happened.
Yeah.
And again, it wasn't traumatic. It didn't end in a horrible situation. I didn't feel honored. They were kind to me. I don't feel like they were out to get me. It wasn't anything like that. My midwives who actually delivered were wonderful. But I just felt like I was part of kind of a cookie cutter system. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I really, if I had just maybe let it play out, maybe it would have been different. I'll never know. But I knew that for the next time around, I really wanted to trust my body maybe.
You're going to take control of that.
Yeah. Yep. And so I started researching it, found a midwife in the area, a home birth midwife, and met with her. I had all these questions, what would you do if this? What would you do with that? And she had answers. Mm-hmm. And we ended up doing home birth with the second baby. And it's great. It was pretty fast once it started. So then, when I got divorced, I had to it was a little bit of mourning because I kind of knew I may never have any more children.
You had that thought maybe?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If I never get married again. And that was hard because I did always want to have a big family. I didn't know how big, but I knew I wanted, to be a mom. Yeah. And so, just having experienced both of my births were beautiful. But having that first home birth and just trusting my body, trusting God, trusting my midwife and her, not just swooping in to take care of me, but I have the most beautiful picture. I'm on the floor laboring through a contraction, and she's literally on the floor next to me, just encouraging me, just there with me. She can't save me from it. She can't.
But she's with you.
She's just with me. Awesome. And she's just honoring. She knows it's hard. She knows it hurts, but she believes. That's cool. Yeah, it's so cool. It was cool. One of the most empowering things I've ever done.
Hell yeah.
So then when Chris and I got married, we're together, he knew I had home birth. Some of that was kind of new to him, but he was open. Yeah. So he's wonderful. He's an awesome, by the way, side note, awesome dad, awesome husband, super open to all of these things. He was not into it really before we met, but he has been really wonderful about
supporting.
Yeah. And open to hear it out. And as soon as he understands what I'm talking about, why would you do that? Yeah. He's all right, let's do it. So we're planning on having a home birth, and then we go to the ultrasound and find out there's 2 babies and not 1. And the doctor's okay, so I know you have had a home birth in the past, so you need to know that you're considered a high-risk pregnancy
because of them being twins.
Yep. And you're not going to be able to see a nurse or a midwife. You're going to have, even through the hospital, you're going to have to see an actual OB. Yes. And you're probably going to have to deliver at this time. I don't remember for sure. I think he was kind of insinuating usually they induce moms before they get to a certain point in their pregnancy. If one baby's not head down, you might have to have a C-section for the second one. All these things. Yeah. You need to know this is what
this looks
you're looking at. And so I sat there and I'm just listening, patiently and just okay. Chris and I leave the appointment and we get in his truck and I'm I'm not doing any of those things. If I have to, for the safety of our babies, I will, but I'm not going to just do it.
Yeah, just
because there's two. Yeah. And so I messaged my home birth midwife, and I'm like, do you guys like even deliver twins? Like, is that even...
Instead of all the anxiety and all the angst and all the worrying, you just sought out the answers, stepped into it.
Yep.
Hell yeah. A lot of people can get something from that.
Yeah. Just believe that there are two babies here. And I don't believe that like we were created just like so flawed. You know, I think that when it comes down to it, my core belief about childbirth is like, tragedies can happen, and oh my gosh, it breaks my heart to even think about when they do, what that's like for the families, the siblings and everybody. But I just don't believe that childbirth is like this emergency waiting to happen.
Absolutely not.
You
It's
know,
not what it was intended to be, I don't think.
No, and it can be so beautiful and so empowering, and we are so much stronger than we realize.
Absolutely.
And you know, it's a blessing. Like if people feel safest in the hospital, like that's fine. And I'm glad that that's available, you know, because there are even true emergencies that happen.
Absolutely.
So I'm really thankful that that's there. Do I feel like that it just has to be the way for everybody? Absolutely not. So for me, I think it just comes down to what I believe about, you know, pregnancy and birth. And I just really believe that it's a beautiful thing that we can like lean into instead of trying to like escape from. And I think that plays into then my parenting as well. I'm not trying to just like make it through the next 18 years and then ship them out. That. You know, like I want us to cultivate the joy. And whether that's while they're in the womb or I'm delivering them or they're 2 years old or they're 12 or whatever, like our life isn't perfect. I'm not perfect, but like I just want it to be beautiful still, you know, in the good times, the hard times. And I think for the most part, we really do a pretty good job at that when you keep it at the forefront, you know.
Absolutely, it's when you're cognizant.
Yes, yes. So, yeah, that's kind of...
You know what time it is now?
What time?
Firing range, the this or that questions.
We're
running out of time.
I kind of forgot about it.
Me and you could talk all day and all night. And
yep.
I am so inspired by what you said today. The ability for us to choose how we want our lives to go. It's there. We are not victims. And how empowered you are and how you have seen those things play out in your life, it is a true testament. And a lot of people are going to gain a lot from hearing your story.
Wonderful. I hope so.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
First one for today. Okay. This episode of The Firing Range is sponsored by Pixel Labs. Zach and Sam, thank you for everything that you do for me. I wouldn't be able to do the podcast without you guys. Are you a sunrise or a sunset type of person?
Sunrise.
See, they're not terrible.
Okay, that was better than I thought it would be.
Pink or blue?
Pink.
Soda or pop? What do you call it?
I feel like I do both. Probably soda more often than
one.
pop. Yeah, soda.
Lavender or orange? Which one are you taking?
We talking essential oils
yes,
here?
Yes, absolutely.
Orange, for sure. That's my favorite.
Oh, that's nice because I did not know that. My wife thought for sure you'd pick lavender.
Yeah, I love lavender too, but wild orange is like my all-time.
So good.
I diffuse it with like every other thing ever.
Same.
Yeah.
I just spoke with Bailey King.
Yeah.
The oil.
Yep.
Half full or half empty for a glass? How are you seeing it?
Well, I mean, I think probably half empty, but I try not to have that be my outlook on life. Oh, yeah. I just get thirsty a lot. So if it's like halfway, I'm going to like refill it.
That's fair. Are you a planner or are you spontaneous?
More of a planner, I would say.
City or country?
Country.
Would you prefer to receive chocolates or flowers?
Probably chocolates.
You hear that, Chris? Cooking or laundry?
Cooking.
Which are you choosing?
Cooking.
And for your future vehicle for these 7 kids, Suburban, a van, or a school bus?
Oh, man. Probably a school bus. And ironically enough, we passed one on the way here that people had converted.
Check out on the way home?
And we're like,
home?
We might just need to do that because we have officially outgrown.
I know. You're at the stage where you need to do like econo van or something. So that's the next step.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, Jalissa. I really enjoyed speaking with you today on The World with Me.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.